Communication in midlife can feel like a battlefield. Missed signals, mixed messages, conversations that go nowhere, and somehow the stakes feel higher than ever. In this episode, we're grasping for the roots of why it's so hard to say what we mean and why we keep showing up anyway. So grab your shovel and your shield and join us for an honest conversation about why communication matters so much and why it can be so hard to get it right.
Hey, I'm Morgan.
I'm Chris. Welcome to the Midlife Mud,
where we promise to bring the real shit, all the grit, and pretty much zero clue about how to deal with this crazy phase of life.
And by the way, because this is all about feeling less alone, what we want most is to connect with you.
Absolutely. So take a few seconds and visit themidlifemud.com and join our community.
And you'll stay up to date on all the dirt.
And even better, become a part of the conversation.
We can't wait to see you there. All right. Tighten those boots and let's get muddy. So, I'm sitting in the car a couple of weeks ago at work, and it was a really busy work week, and I had this evaluation that I needed to do with a patient. And the way it works is there are multiple services, and sometimes someone may just get physical therapy, sometimes they may get physical therapy, nursing, occupational therapy, etc. It just depends on the assessment. And so I go in and I spend an hour and a half doing an evaluation, and my opinion was this guy really, really needed a nurse. So I pick up the phone and I call my supervisor and I say to her, this guy needs a nurse. And I said the guy's name clearly, and we reviewed like where the patient lived. And she said to me, we can't cover that because the address isn't in an area where we can provide nursing services. And I said, okay. And then she said, why don't you just call the doctor and have them write a different order? I called the primary care office and the whole thing was kind of done until 2 days later when my supervisor called me back with another person on speakerphone and said, why didn't you take this patient? And I was like, what's happening? Am I in an alternate universe right now? I was very clear. And I felt really taken aback and sort of like I was being attacked. And I thought, what did I do? I communicated who the patient was, where the patient lived, what is the problem? And, I think she was also frustrated. So it just was one of those examples of how communication can get so fucked up and sloppy. And there were so many opportunities. Like what I do in a situation like that always is I stop and start thinking about what happened, like doing the replay. How could this have been done differently?
Yeah.
So we did get it sorted out, but I think there was definite opportunity to be able to communicate better. And I really think that everybody was going fast in that scenario, including my supervisor. And if we had all just slowed down a little bit, we probably would have caught that.
Yeah. It never fails to amaze me how a lot of people who think they are fantastic communicators aren't.
Right.
And that's not me saying that you're not a good communicator. What I have noticed, I guess I should say anecdotally, is that someone who says they're a good communicator, that's probably a red flag. You're like, oh shit, I'm dealing with one of these people,
Oh, it's one of those.
Yeah. So what's important? Why are we talking about communication? I think all of us have heard, or in some context, there has been a discussion about why communication is important. I think of it as like a super skill.
People that do it very well, I admire. I can think of people that I have known in my life that are really successful people, and a lot of it has to do with their ability to communicate.
I think it is anchored to success.
Oh, for sure.
And I am not just talking about in your career or climbing the ladder.
I'm not either.
I mean, just like in relationships with people, in the way that you interact with the world. When you think about, we are individual beings, right? And we have all this stuff going on inside us. And we have to be able, if we're going to connect in any way, we have to be able to get what's in here out there and have it land. That's like not an easy thing when you really think about what's going on there and all of the steps along the way that have to happen.
I just thought of this analogy of the plane that's getting fueled up in the air. So you've got two planes, and one plane's the fuel plane. The other plane has to dock up. And that's incredibly challenging to do, by the way. It's kind of like that with communication. You're your own universe trying to communicate with another universe or another whole room full of universes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's magic when it connects.
Yeah, I want to know the secret sauce.
Right.
And what's also interesting is that today we have so many different ways of communicating now that are, quote, newer.
Well, and just to kind of call out what's the relevance of this in midlife, I think the relevance is that there's so much demand to adapt in midlife because there are so many different ranges and styles of communication. And then we have this big influx of technology that we've been dealing with over the last 30 years. And we've got email and FaceTime and texting, and we have Zoom calls and good old-fashioned in-person communication. And then we've got a subset of people like our parents who never had any of that crap. And then we've got a subset of people like your 11-year-old who
has only had that crap.
Only had that crap.
I never talked to her in person. We just text back and forth.
Yeah, why would I talk to you? I don't want to talk to you.
And for context, I remember the very first time. This was back in the flip phone era, right? I was in dental school, and actually a friend of Matt's, we were out somewhere doing something. And he had his flip phone and he flipped it open and he's doing the old school texting, like
Yes.
You got to hit the button 12 times to get to the right letter. And I looked at him, I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, I'm texting. This is like a new thing. And I was like, why? I can't imagine a situation where I would ever send a text. Why don't you just call them? And it's so funny to me now because now I'm like, why would I call them?
I know.
I don't want to bother them. It seems like this big imposition to actually pick up the phone and call someone. Almost an insult.
I know. I remember thinking the same thing. I actually remember standing on a sidewalk on Bardstown Road in Louisville in front of Bristol Restaurant.
I was on Bardstown Road too.
That's weird. Yeah. And thinking, this texting thing is never going to take off. Like, what is this? This is just like a fluky little feature of the phone that it's just going to go away. But what happened is they made texting much easier through the interface. And now that it's easier to do, it's much better.
Quote unquote. When you talk about these various ways of communicating, text, email, FaceTime, social media for that matter, which is like a very public display of communication, regular run-of-the-mill face-to-face communication.
Ooh, you say that like it's bad.
I know. I'm like, bleh.
You mean sit down and talk with someone?
It was funny. I was at a meeting yesterday for work, and we were talking about our process for new patient consultations. Mm-hmm. And there was this story about this other practice who, when they first started years ago, they were having like 2-hour-long consultation. The doctor was sitting in there for 2 hours with a new patient. Obviously, they have revamped that. That's totally shifted because production-wise, that's a nightmare. I think of that and I'm like, oh my God, I can't sit and talk to anybody face-to-face for that long. So it just made me laugh. And face-to-face time is such a valuable thing, but we're so out of the habit of it.
I think we're more and more out of the habit of it. Back to the adaptability in the context. Dad, for example, we've gotten into this little routine, the Tuesday night FaceTime call.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something very enjoyable about doing it that way because we can see each other. And there's all of that nonverbal. And it's maybe not quite as good as being in the same room with him, but it's close. It's a lot closer than being even on the phone. And it's way better than texting. So that's like one end of the spectrum. And Dad grew up in the era like he's more of a sit down and talk kind of guy. Like there's no texting, emailing. All of those are more foreign.
Although I will say, he is really good at those giant emojis.
They're emoji stickers.
Yes, the emoji stickers are free-flowing from that man.
They're free flowing and they just, sometimes they're vexing. I don't know. But then you go to the other side, you've got the 11-year-old parked in front of YouTube while they're scrolling through their phone. And how are you going to break into that?
Yeah.
Communicating in that style really pushes me more because I tend to be actually a little bit more on the pick up the phone, have a conversation, sit down with someone's side.
That's where we started. Our generation is like one of the last to sort of be in both.
Right.
You make a fantastic point about this adaptability. When you start out as a kid, and I've noticed this with my own kids, all you're doing is just learning language and you're just getting it out, right? And so they just, a lot of times, will speak the same way to me as they speak to their friends, as they speak to their teacher, it's like across the board, everybody's bro.
It's like a mono speaker.
Yeah.
It's one mode. It comes out the same every time.
Yeah. There is no nuance.
Right. And it's pronounced bruh, not bro. But
Well,
yeah.
damn it, you're right. And as we get older and as we get out into the real world, we start learning, oh, this is not going to land if I talk to my boss this way. So we start that adaptation. And I think by midlife, it's about getting really good at it. We have a lot of opportunities to practice it and take it for what you will. I mean, some people take the opportunity and some people stick with, this is how I say what I say, and that's it. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to.
Well, and back to the person that is a really successful person, one of the things that I admire, they've been able to figure out how to take all of these tools and adapt them and meet people kind of where they are without losing himself, right? He's still himself and the core of who he is. His message is clear. He's just adapting the way that he delivers it, when he delivers it, how. All of those things.
So let's just kind of run through a list of the qualities of a good communicator.
But it's boring if we just go through a list. So,
and I'm going to tell you a story. This just happened recently. I was out to dinner with a friend, and she was telling me something really important to her. And I was listening. I was hearing what she was saying. And there was like this pivotal point in the conversation. She had had some kind of revelation about her life. And essentially, the essence of it was, she had wanted something for a very long time, and she was sort of letting go of that and saying, well, what would my life be like if I don't get that? And in my mind, I'm thinking, hallelujah, like, wow, she just opened up her whole world. Somehow, I said something that she interpreted completely opposite of what I meant. She thought I was telling her, like, don't let go of that, don't give up. That's what she interpreted. And she waited like a month to address it with me. She went a month thinking that I said the opposite of what I said. That had an impact on our whole relationship. So clearing that up and saying, no, I actually meant exactly the opposite of what you think.
It's so easy to do that.
Yeah. And so it makes you wonder, like, even when you think you're getting it right.
You know, I took this training at work years ago, a basic training about communication. And one of the things that they reinforced a lot was to make sure that when you're communicating, that there's a back and forth. If you're communicating a concept or you're teaching something, you state whatever it is that you're teaching, and then you ask for the person to repeat, or you repeat it. And then you confirm that it's right, or maybe it needs a little bit of a correction, because it's like that game of telephone. It's so easy for us to be in a mode, and I may not even mean to. I'm just going fast, and I just hear what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you get the gist and just like...
I shipped it into my message, right?
Yeah, which is interesting. I think that to the point of like, what are the qualities? There's an openness.
Yes.
Really listening and taking it in. Because to your point, it takes two people to communicate. Two.
That's right.
Even if you're writing something, you're assuming there is a reader on the other end. And the whole point is we are connecting. We are transferring information from us to them or them to us.
Another thing that is on this list is not over talking. And it makes me recall a time when I was having a conversation with my AA sponsor. And we were talking about working through the steps. And specifically, there's a step around making amends with others. And he was great. he pulled out this folder with a paper in it, and we're at a Starbucks having a coffee, and he puts it on the table. And it's this little script. And he handwrite the whole thing out. And it said generically, when I was drinking, I did this. And I know that probably was really hurtful, and I'm sorry for what I did. And now I'm trying to live life in a different way. What can I do to make things better in our relationship? Is there anything that I can do? And then the script said, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Yeah, that's it. Period. End it.
And I looked at Joe and he goes, shut up.
Yeah, good communicators are not beating a dead horse, dancing around a bush. Give me more of these little colloquialisms. They are really good at getting to the point. And there is so much power. Have you ever noticed that? People who are like, blah, 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 period. It just gets right in there.
But the power is more when I have a belief that that person really sees me. And that's back to like feeling heard and listened to. And there's this interesting balance around being able to just say it what it is, like bottom line, because that's really important, but also being able to do that in a way where people feel like they're also in the room and have had a voice.
Right. It's not the kind of power that robs other people of their power.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what makes a good communicator, I think. The skill part of it, oh God, there's so much skill to it. Because number one, good communicators know what they want to say. They know their message. They don't overtalk. They deliver it. They're concise. But they also have, it's not that they don't have emotions, but they don't lead with that. They are able to put the emotions in the back seat for a minute. They're still there in the car, but they are leading with their message. And they are incredibly good at anticipating how the other person may interpret or receive the information, emotionally and just intellectually, both. That's super skill.
It is. I remember a time, it's been a few years, but I was asked to give a speech for someone that I was really close to that was leading an organization, and then they were stepping down and retiring. And I was very emotional about that. And I got up and I didn't really know what to say. I was just very emotional. And that was coming across. And I think it's okay to be emotional when you express a message at times, but it's easy for the message to just get lost.
Yeah.
And I remember asking a friend of mine, like, how was that? And they're like, well,
I know how you feel.
yeah, right.
I don't know what you were trying to say, but...
But it's really hard to communicate well when you're triggered with emotion. It's interesting right now because I'm on Cape Cod. Now is the time when all the influx is happening. And I am noticing the level of impatience on the road is unbelievable. People just losing their shit all over the place. And if you're trying to communicate like that, there's no message. I'm not going to respond to you if you're throwing your finger up at me and waving your arms. And
not that you were going to go have lunch with that person necessarily, but this is where the breakdown in connection of our society and our culture, it's interactions like that. That's where that starts.
Right. I think asking great questions is another piece of good communication. There's this assimilation process that happens when you ask great questions, and I think good leaders are able to ingest a lot of information and then synthesize that and distill it down into a clear message. And that's one of the ways where good communicators really get people rallied together, I think.
Yeah. Good communication feels like such a cornerstone of good leadership. I'm thinking about something that happened at work just yesterday. We were having our morning meeting and we're getting ready to implement some changes in the office. And someone said, well, I just want a heads up. Like, I just need a heads up before X, Y, Z changes, and it got a little bit tense. Like the whole vibe in the room went a little bit like, whoa, she's resistant to change. And the person in charge was a little bit like, well, this is your warning. Like, I don't know how many more ways to say it. And I'm watching this interaction and I'm thinking, okay, I feel like the real question here is, what is a heads up in your mind? Because what's a heads up for you may not be the same for me.
Right.
And being able to ask or even think to ask questions like that.
Yeah, it's also a moment of introspection potentially of saying, are you really asking for a heads up? Are you saying that you don't want change?
Right. We can make assumptions all day long about what we think they mean. But if we're a good communicator, I feel like we can ask those questions. So there is something about really listening. And I don't mean just listening to the words. I also mean picking up the undertones.
Yes.
Whatever else is showing up. This is why face-to-face communication is so valuable in high-stakes situations. But also taking what you're hearing, knowing the right questions to ask. And that requires a lot of awareness. Self-awareness, awareness of what's going on around you. And that's part of the finesse of it.
There is such a style to it.
Yeah. And I think being polite about it. It doesn't mean you have to go in and be an asshole when we're talking about leadership and we're talking about the way that leaders communicate. And for some reason, men are coming into my brain. Like a lot of people think of men in leadership and how they can walk in a room and be like, blah, 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 and then walk out. And that's, quote, acceptable. Well, I don't think that that necessarily makes a good communicator.
No.
And those are not the people that people are willing to follow necessarily. They might fear them. They might get in line because they don't want to be embarrassed or they don't want to be called out in any way. But really good communicators and good leaders have a way of fostering an environment where there is openness for good communication.
I remember a time where I worked for a large corporation of 35,000 people or so. And the CEO of the company, for the majority of the time that I was there, I just really always liked the guy. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I think if you had pushed me to, I would have said that I just felt like he was a nice guy who seemed to care. And if I'm digging deeper, he just always was trying to listen and express that he had listened, and he didn't always have the answer, and he was okay with saying that publicly. And he retired, and the guy that took over was the walk in the room, say 5 things and leave guy.
Yeah.
I just don't think of that as good communication. And I think sometimes in our current world, there can be a little bit of confusion around being clear and concise is part of good communication. But sometimes that can be bad communication because it's too one-sided.
Yeah, it can't be just those things.
Yes, which goes back into that adaptability thing. The interesting thing is that just because I might communicate clearly sometimes doesn't mean that that will always be received the way that I want it to be. And that's okay too. In fact, I think that is another good trait of a good communicator. And it feeds into the bravery a little bit. You're not trying to craft the message to get a response.
A specific response, right? Like, I'm going to tell you you're fired, but I want you to be fine with it. Not going to happen.
Right. Doesn't work that way. Sometimes you have to deliver hard messages and it gets messy. At the end of the day, it still feels better than not having done that.
I think you can cause yourself a lot of pain and strife as the person who's trying to beat around the bush or just be the nice person. It can be incredibly frustrating, especially if you are in a position of leadership and you're afraid to piss people off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to get the job done. There's something about really being able to see the bigger picture so that you can then communicate in a way that is in alignment with the bigger picture instead of how that person feels. And that's not to say you don't take that person's feelings into account. Back to being polite, kind. So what does this all boil down to? I think it's a great reminder that it takes a lot to be a good communicator. I don't take it lightly. And so there's some amount of grace to be given and to receive in the way of miscommunications.
Yes.
We can continue to get better at it if we're really making an intentional effort to. Because again, we have so many opportunities every single day.
Yeah. And how many different modes and ways that we communicate, even without really thinking of it as communication. I mean, really, in some form, almost every single thing we do in the presence of another person is communication, which can be a little bit daunting if you let it be, but it can also be pretty cool.
So what's one thing you're going to do to practice good communication today?
I am going to check my own assumptions before I take any action. And I can think of ways that I'm going to do that at work, and I can think of ways that I'll do that at home.
That's a good one. I'd like to practice the say the message and then stop, period. Like, don't justify.
It feels like you're hang gliding. And I've never done that, by the way, and I don't think I ever will. But I can imagine you're running off this cliff with this glider, and then there's this moment where you're like, is this thing really going to fucking catch me?
That's the bravery in it.
It is an amazing experience to practice that. It really is.
Yes. All right. Well, join our community, or you know what? Communicate with us. You can go to our website, themidlifemud.com. We want to actually hear your voice, okay? Get brave. Use your voice. Leave us a message. Tell us about a time that you had a miscommunication, a communication flop, or tell us about a time where you were a rock star in that department. We want to hear about it.
And if you're worried that we're going to use your message somehow without telling you, don't worry about that. We will email you if we find something in your message that we feel we want to share on the show before we share anything and get your permission.
Do the thing.
Do it.
All right. We'll see you next time.
In the mud. Thanks for being with us in the mud today.
If you liked this episode, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the show. This is going to make sure you never miss an episode, and it's going to help us grow our muddy community, which would mean the world to us.
See you next time in the mud.